Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Unstoppable Podcast with Ralph Graves Jr. I'm your host, Ralph Graves. Guys, I say before every episode, you guys could be listening to anybody. You could be doing anything. The fact that you decided to come and check out this episode and check me out, and whether it's on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, wherever you're at, thank you. Thank you so much. I know you could be anywhere else, but thank you. I'm humbled by that. Today's guest, every time I get a guest on and we talk before we come on, before we go live with you guys, you know, it's one of these guys that I feel like I've met already. I feel like that we've hung out before. It's just so easy to talk to. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Thakur. How are you, sir?
I am doing great, buddy.
You are the host of the Mike Thakur Show. Mike, you have an extensive background. You are a Guinness World Record holder. We're going to talk about that. You're doing some great things, man. You're coaching and business and doing some wonderful things, man. Thank you. And I'm humbled that you said yes to come on the Unstoppable
No,
podcast.
absolutely. I'm excited. I always like to chit chat, and always like to meet great people. So
You're in Houston. I'm out here in Jersey. I'm freezing. You're sunning and funning. Okay. All right. You know.
Oh no, I'm freezing. It's like 50 degrees here. This is not good for me.
Now, where are you from, Mike? Talk about where are you originally from? Where's your background?
Manchester, England, UK.
Manchester, England. Okay. So how'd you get over here? How'd you get over to the US, man? Tell us that story.
So it's funny. We've been here actually a few different times, and so my wife and I originally the first time we were in Bible school studying theology.
Okay.
And we had the opportunity to come out to an organization called Teen Challenge in Nashville. And we spent the summer there with them. It's a substance rehabilitation program for those that don't know. Okay. Awesome time. It was just phenomenal. Got nothing but great memories. And I think that was the first time I really just saw God work in a very real, practical way. And so a few years later, we came out to work at a church. We were youth pastors for a couple of years. And then the third time, when we finally moved here for good, we came back to work at a church and did the ministry thing for about 4 or 5 years. Youth, kids, assistant, church planter, and moved back into a business role.
Wow, man, what a story, man! I said you went from Manchester to Nashville. How long did you stay in Nashville?
It was about 3 months.
Okay, wow. And I remember Teen Challenge. I remember hearing that when I was coming up.
Yeah. No, they're still around. I mean, they do a great job, I think. At least the one that we were at, the success rate was like 80-something%, which apparently is phenomenal for that kind of a program.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, if you first time listening to the program, I pastor a church. I pastor Cornerstone Community Church in Millville. I've been pastoring about 15 years. Born and raised, my father was a pastor for 41 years, 43 years. And so, when we talk about Teen Challenge, Teen Challenge been around forever. I remember a lot of things from those years coming up, But Mike, again, man, so what are you doing now? So you switched over to a business role. Tell us about your business, because then we're going to get into about some unstoppable stuff. But tell us about your business.
So right now I have a co-working business, Flex Workspace. Most people are familiar with it nowadays, thanks to the popularity over the last few years. I just thought I had a great idea, and apparently, so did a few other folks. So, could have been a little bit easier for me, but I got 2 in Houston, I got 1 in Dallas, and we're having fun with it. So,
how are you adjusting with that Flex Workspace with what's going on now with what's happening in the world?
Yeah, it's probably not ideal that, a lot of folks are working from home when you're in the workspace business and you want to get them out of the home. But I think also a lot of folks are just realizing that working from home is just not great. And, they miss the human interaction. They miss the community, being around other folks. And so I think coming out of this, it's going to make it stronger. It's just been a little bit of a roller coaster the last few months, but all is good. And we're still paying all the bills. So
I like those work space. Now, what's the name of yours?
So we're called Work Lodge.
Work Lodge. Okay. Yeah, I like those. There's a few out here on the East Coast, and it's different than coming in, say, to the church office, and it's different than sitting at home, which is great. My kids are grown. Everybody's out the house, but I'm still home.
Right.
You're still home. But when you get those workspaces, I really enjoy them, man. And I think that you're definitely on to something, man. And, I like those spaces like that, man. And so it's cool. I never really met anybody who started one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And so,
Well, I didn't know anything about it. I was working from home and I hated being at the house all the time. So,
yeah,
and I figured I'd go and get me an office, and I couldn't find one I liked. So I thought I'd build one, and
yeah,
it
yeah.
just got a little bit bigger.
And so you started podcasting. Ladies and gentlemen, after you get done listening to my podcast, jump on over to his podcast, then jump back over to mine, then jump back over to his. His podcast is awesome, right? He
Absolutely.
has some great stuff going on. He's being, I think they call him the #1 podcaster in Houston. I think that's what I saw out there. I think that's what I saw. But Mike, let's talk about it, man. You know, what are you learning right now in all of your journey? This is about being unstoppable, man. So if I were to ask you, what are you learning right now? What are you learning? What is Mike Thakur learning right now?
I think I'm learning two things. So one, I'm writing a book right now. It's going to come out later on this year. And so that's been an interesting journey. I've written one once before, years ago when I was church planning, but this is like a real book, and I've got an author who's helping me with that. And don't want to give too much away because we haven't formally announced the name or anything. But the concept is, one of the things we did with WorkPledge when we built the business was we created a 501c3 with it. So I'm obviously a ministry guy. I used to be a preacher. Obviously, you still are. Yeah. And so for me, this was a way we could take God's blessing from business and then funnel it to mission.
Yeah.
And so we've been living this for the last 5 years. And that's what the book's going to be about. That's what we're going to talk about is just the fact that I think the future of mission, the future of ministry really is going to have to be something different than what we've got right now, because people aren't giving enough, and you can't keep asking. So you got to do better than that.
Yeah.
And I think as I'm thinking those thoughts through now, trying to figure out how to get them on paper, that's obviously the fun of the book. And then the other thing is, I think I'm just learning that even though I've been a Christian for most of my life, as I came into this year, God's been nudging us to do something a little bit different and a little bit more outrageous for us.
Yeah.
And so again, we haven't announced any of this stuff yet. I think we've got a big announcement coming in March, but we're doing something we've never even come close to doing before. And it's going to take a real stretch of faith, and it's going to take an awful lot of focus and time and energy as well.
Yeah.
And really trying to figure out how to put all of these entrepreneurial skills now into the mission field.
Okay.
I can tell you, hot off the press, I was on a call yesterday with some folks we've worked with out in Thailand. And one of the things we're looking to do is potentially launch a ministry or an evangelism school in Thailand for the locals who are getting saved, so they can be trained and skilled up properly and with some depth and some foundational knowledge to go out there then, and they can then minister in the slums and the local areas and that kind of stuff. We want to empower them more. And that's just one of many things we got going on. So right now for me, I'm just learning all that and realizing that I thought I was pretty good at saying yes to God, but this one I'm wrestling with because it's a big ask, and I don't know how we're going to pull it off. So evidently I'm not going to pull it off. It's going to be him, but I thought I was past that point, and apparently I'm not. I'm still wrestling.
Don't you love that about God? Don't you love that part of this walk is that he always calls us to something that's beyond.
No, I don't love it at all.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is hard, but it forces us to lean on him. And then when it's done, like, man, he gets all the glory out of it, and we're used, and he uses us, man. And it's just because we're saying yes to him. So, man, I'll be praying for you, man, on this journey. And let me say publicly on my podcast, man, is there anything that we can do over here, that Ralph Grace Jr. can do, that Unstoppable can do, anything I can do from where I am, do not hesitate, man. I love what you're doing. Do not hesitate to ask, and we will get involved any way that you need us to get involved in that, man.
All right, I'm going to come knocking. So,
well, I said it publicly now. Now the Globe has heard me say that, so I'm held accountable to my show and your show and all the listeners, and to God.
Right.
To God.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big one.
Yeah. Man. So you've had some trials. You've had some ups and downs, and my book Unstoppable is about 7 universal laws that'll change the way you pursue and achieve success. And when I said universal laws, some folks who are non-believers, oh yeah, God is the universe. No, God is not the universe. God created the universe.
Right.
And so I talk about these universal laws. I had to break down to them. A universal law is like gravity. If you respect it, you'll probably do well. There are so many universal laws that if we respect, we do well. I only wrote about 7. And one of them is like, they're like the law of control, the law of forgiveness, man, the law of mental equivalency, things like that. And so I want to ask you, man, during the ups and downs. Now, my first law I wrote about was the law of control. You can't control what happens. You can only control how you respond to it.
Right.
And so how has failure, because failure comes into our lives, how has failure shaped your life, Mike? How's failure shaped your life?
So if I think about something like failure, obviously I'm not saying I've never failed at something.
Right.
I don't know that failure has ever got to the point where it's really kind of brought me down and completely reshaped me, even though some things I've done haven't worked and other things I've done have.
Right.
I think I've always been mature enough to say, oh, well, that was a learning opportunity. Let's learn and move on. I'm still not sure I'm there now, but I'm closer to that than I was when I was younger. So it's definitely been hard.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I've wrestled with relating to failure, and so I'll talk about moving countries, right? So for those that don't know, it's not an easy thing to move country. You got to get visas, you got to, apply for stuff. There's all kinds of, things you jump through.
Right.
And we had a lot of difficulty with that the first time around. So when we were at Teen Challenge, they wanted us to come back and work with them. We said yes. We graduated from college. We thought we were moving to the US and we had some issues with the visas. We didn't get them.
Wow.
And for me personally, I think that's an example of where maybe I felt like this had failed or I had failed, even though it wasn't something I was in control of. But maybe I didn't read the rules right. Maybe I should have understood that we couldn't go back or whatever. And so I think I internalized it probably more than I should have, even though it wasn't something that necessarily I directly caused.
Yeah, I understand.
But it still affected things, and I still found it hard. God, what's going on? Like, we wanted to do ministry. These guys wanted us to do ministry.
Yeah.
We were supposed to be good to go. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
And there's been obviously multiple times in life where you have those kind of thoughts, and obviously you move on and grow through it. But I think the encouragement for folks who maybe think there's outside pressures and forces coming in.
Yeah.
It is what it is, right? We learn to ride the wave. I talk about this a lot. I read it in a book. It's not my idea, but business, life, it's like surfing. I mean, the wave's going to come, and the goal is learn how to ride it and enjoy the ride, because you can't stop it. And
can't stop it.
It is what it is. So when I read that, it really helped me a lot.
Yeah. And I thank you for saying that, man. And I think the listeners are really, will really understand what you mean by that, man. Things are just going to happen. Life is going to come, and learn to ride the wave, man. Learn to ride it. Learn to stay persistent. I like the fact that in that story, I heard that there was a persistence, that you and your wife stayed persistent in getting here, and you're here. One of the things that I constantly talk about, you can't stop pursuing what you've been called to pursue because there's a setback or because there's a delay. There has to be some skin in the game. Got to be some tough skin involved, man. So thank you for sharing that, man. So if I jump over to your podcast, man, what are some of the things we'll hear on your podcast?
Yeah, so I started the podcast as a solo podcast. Did about 10 episodes on my own. Had my wife join me for a couple of them.
Okay.
And we had some fun. And then we started to bring in some guests. And so now it's a bit of a mix, probably a few more guests, and then, still a solo or a co-show with Linda. Definitely enjoyed meeting some great people. Genuinely, I think I made more friends, in the last few months from podcasting and just meeting some amazing folks than definitely in the previous few months. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And also just really encouraging to hear, other people's stories, to see what God's doing in folks. And I don't know. I honestly, I think I've been blown away. I started it. I kind of hesitated for about a year.
Yeah.
Thought I should do it, but I didn't really want to. And then we did it, and I thought, man, I'll just make it to Christmas, and then we'll just call it a wrap, and we'll just do one season, maybe 10, 15 episodes, it'd be okay.
Right.
And honestly, even by episode 9 or 10, I was probably still at the place where I'll knock a few more out, and we'll just wrap it up. It's been fun, but no worries. And then I don't know, something changed. I don't know if it's the guests. It was just awesome, but now I'm having so much fun with it. I don't see us stopping.
Where would we be without podcasting? You know what I'm saying? Where would we be? We'd be begging to get on somebody's radio show.
Probably.
I was on the radio for a little while, so I thank God for this platform is what I'm saying. I thank God for this platform, man. And so, like I said, man, you and your wife are doing great things, man. And we're excited to hear from you here at Unstoppable. What's the greatest lesson that you've learned? I mean, whether it's as a believer or as in business. Here's the thing. I think that we as Christians and believers fail to understand that God has no problem with business. God has no problem with you owning a business. God has no problem with you doing well. And even because I really believe we serve a God that opens up doors for us to walk in so that we might show the world who he is. So what's some of the greatest lessons you've learned combining the two as a Christian in the business world?
Well, it's funny you say that. And so this is going to tie back into the book I'm writing and just where my headspace is at. And I made this comment when I was working with my writing coach about a week ago, maybe even a couple of weeks ago. But as a kid growing up, I always felt like God called me to do something. Yeah. And so as most kids in church, I suspect when you feel God tugging, well, okay, that means I got to go to Bible college. It means I'm going to go and be a kids pastor or a youth pastor or an associate pastor or something in that career path of church.
Yeah.
And I don't have necessarily regret, but I think if somebody had sat me down and said, Mike, you can serve God and be more effective for the mission field through business and entrepreneurship than you ever will going to work in a church.
Yeah.
I think I would have made different choices. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. The power of business, the power of entrepreneurship, when it's fused with the Holy Spirit, when it's empowered by the Holy Spirit and God's in it and with you, man, we can do all kinds of things. We can change the world if we want to make an effort, because it's not ours anyway.
No, it's not. And I think, and you hit the nail on the head too, man. Coming up in a Christian home, Christian environment, Christian school, Christian educated, we think that God can only use you. Right. God will only use you, right there. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying no. Listen, I've been on platforms. You've been on platforms to where I'm a Christian. You know it. But let me serve you in the area where you need to be served. And if you want to talk about Christ later on, we can talk about Christ. We can talk about Christ whenever you want to.
Right.
Do you think, and this is going on a whole different thing. Now it's just two guys having a conversation. Do you think we hurt as Christians, our businesses, by labeling it a Christian business? I think we do.
Wow, what a question.
Does it matter if the business is Christian or if I'm Christian?
Okay, so let me tell you what we've done. So I don't think we've advertised that Work Lodge is a Christian business,
right?
But as a business, we have a nonprofit that we fund, and we clearly fund faith-based initiatives as well as not. So if you look quickly enough, you'll see it. We put one sign up in each one of our Work Lodge locations that says, "To God be the glory."
Yeah,
it's not huge. It's there. It's kind of, you walk past it in a hallway. Some people probably won't even notice it. Some will. That's it. That's as much as we do. Right. We don't say anything else. I think what does hurt is the folks who say I'm a Christian business, and I mean this respectfully, read your Bible, dude. Like, you can't go out there and say I'm a Christian business, but you're cussing every 5 minutes and you're treating people like trash and you don't look after your staff. Yeah. James is real practical. You say you have faith, show me those works. But show me the outworking of that faith. If you haven't got the works, you don't have the faith.
Yeah.
And so I think that absolutely is detrimental to the kingdom, because then you end up with people saying, "Oh, there's another one of those Christian business guys."
Exactly.
And the eye roll.
Yeah. So I just it was just a thought that passed, because I tell people who I am and what I do, but I'm not labeled as a Christian speaker. I'm just a speaker, and how if you want me to come to your company or come to your town, if there's a topic you want me to talk about, I will. Now if you want me to come to church and preach, I'll do that too. But and are running our businesses, man. I have plenty of Christian friends who run phenomenal businesses that don't have to tell people this is a Christian business, because that's the way they treat people and the way that they do things. It makes those who are non-Christian ask the question, right, what do you have? What am I missing? And then that's the opportunity.
No, and you're exactly right. I mean, we should be living our lives in such a way that people stop and say, "Hang on a second, something different here.
Right.
What is it?" Like,
And
I
then,
need to understand.
yeah. And then that's the opportunity. That's the
Yeah,
opportunity right there. Right there,
yeah,
man. Right there. So I don't even, that wasn't even part of what I was going to ask you, but I'm just, hey.
that's okay. I'm with you.
We went there. We went there, man. So thanks for sharing on that, man. But I again, man, just your story to me is amazing. Oh, a lot of people think they can just pick up and leave the country and move to another country. That's just not the way it happens.
Right.
Especially not in this day and age. I mean, you just, it's different now. It's different. I don't care where you're coming from or where you're going to. There's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through, man. And I just want to thank you for having enough faith in God and being obedient to God and coming over here to the U.S., which is your mission field.
Right.
You're a foreign missionary.
Yeah.
You're from
Yeah.
Manchester,
Absolutely.
England. You're in Houston. I don't. People may not think of it that way, but I do. You're not home.
Right.
You're in the foreign mission field, man. So thank you for being over and doing that, man. So what is Mike Thakur reading right now? What should we be reading? What books have you read? What should be reading right now? What's blessing your
Oh
life?
my word. So it turns out I never would have believed this, but it turns out I'm a bit of a reader.
Okay,
So
good.
this year I'm doing it. My goal is at least a book a week. So
Okay,
52 books for the year. I'm on about book number 8. So I can tell you in the last few books that I read a really thin little booklet called Priests and Kings. I don't even think it's in print anymore. I
wow.
found it because somebody recommended it to me by a guy called David High, High.
Okay,
And it was written, I don't even know, 10, 20 years ago.
okay.
And it's about this concept of Old Testament priests and Old Testament kings. And he relates it to the modern day church and pastors, businessmen and entrepreneurs, and how the king
Wow.
was the guy who funded the mission. The priest's job was to do the spiritual stuff and hear from God, but the priest didn't go out fundraising. When God said, go build a temple, David said, okay, how much? And
Wow.
so it's a really
Wow.
interesting book. Yeah, I mean, it's
Wow.
very small. I don't know, 35, 40 pages. You read it in 30 minutes or whatever, but
I
really
have to
enjoyed it. And
find that.
actually, yeah, no, you should. You should. I actually called him up and talked to him on the phone, the guy that wrote it a few days ago, because I was so impressed with it. So
Well,
that's one.
if you get him on the podcast, email me. I need to let me know what episode it's going to be on
Yeah,
because
no,
I
I
want to
will.
hear
So
that.
he's going to be on it. Yeah, no.
Yeah,
It'll be in a few weeks, I'm sure.
yeah.
But yeah, I was just because that's where I'm at right now. So to read
Wow.
that definitely inspiring.
Priest and King.
Um,
Yeah, good.
Yeah, priests and kings. Really enjoyed the 4 Hour Work Week. Actually, Tim Ferriss, New
Yes.
York Times bestseller. I read
Yeah.
that one a couple of weeks ago, and a couple of things in there that I wasn't, gelling with too much. But I like the way how he just laid out, hey, this is what I did. This is how I did it. Like, if you want to go for it, here's everything I can share. And he just openly and transparently shares links to everything he found and whatever else. I'm
Yeah.
pretty impressed with that. So that was a good one. I'm reading a book. I'm reading a book by a recent podcast guest, Britt Mooney, called "Saying Yes to God."
Okay.
And so that's one I'm in the middle of right now. I usually have about 2 or 3 books on the go. I usually do a spiritual book, and I usually do a non-spiritual book,
Gotcha.
typically business or entrepreneurial focused. And that way I can kind of flip flop and just keep my mind fresh as I'm reading through them both, and and just plow through them together. So I finished one by Adam McCain and Scott Silveri a couple of weeks ago. It was all about obscurity, dealing with obscurity in your life. When
Okay.
God puts you somewhere, nothing's working, even though you think it should be.
Right.
It was a good book. I mean, it was enjoyable, and I think it'd be very relevant to a lot of folks who are dealing with that maybe right now, feeling a little bit lost.
Very good. Very good. So you have turned into a reader. You just
Oh yeah,
you rattled off
apparently,
4 books, man. That you turned into a reader.
I can't believe it. I got to tell you, I never touched a book when I was growing up, so I don't know how I got through
Yeah.
school, but I didn't read a thing.
Hey man, if you had to encourage my listeners right now, man, about being unstoppable, about being persistent, man, what was one thing that you would say to them right now in the different seasons of life they could be in?
Yeah, I think I would say, look, there's only one answer to every question. And, Jesus was real clear. Seek first the kingdom. Forget everything else. Forget what's going on in life.
Yeah.
For me, I'm in the workspace business. This isn't a great time to be in the workspace business. And so I'm living this through. And even though it's not what I want it to be, the Bible says I'm supposed to keep seeking him first every day, every minute, every hour, get my mind in a place where I'm looking at him. I'm interested in him. I'm wanting to know him more genuinely for who he is.
Yeah.
And I don't need to worry about the rest. If this all collapses tomorrow, who cares? If I know him more, great. If it all blows up tomorrow and we go banshee and make a bunch of money, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, it's not mine anyway. So just keep pressing into him. That's where you're going to find everything you need.
Man, thank you for that. I like that. Keep pressing into him. And Matthew 6:33, man, is it's a scripture we know, but very seldom really apply each and every day. Thank you for sharing that, man. Thank you. Hey, man, listen, where can my listeners find you? Where can they, I told them about the Mike Thakur Show, but is there an Instagram, a Twitter? I know about the podcast. Talk to us. How can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on social. Honestly, the easiest way, just go to my website, beamazingwithmike.com, and you'll see the Instagram and Facebook links and all that kind of fun stuff. You'll see the podcast on there if you want to check it out. So, one place is home.
Beamazingwithmike.com. Ladies and gentlemen, unstoppable people, get there and be amazing with Mike. He's truly amazing. Mike, thanks for your time, man. Thanks for sacrificing these few moments, man, just to pour into our lives, man. I really thank you.
I appreciate you having me on the show.
I thank you. Guys, you've been listening to the Unstoppable Podcast with Ralph Graves Jr. Again, guys, thank you for checking us out. Thank you for being a part of it. And guys, I'll see you again next time. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you.